Hello, I'm Dr. Debi, and welcome back to the Revolutionary Marriage Podcast. Today, I want to talk about something I see far too often. Couples who look good on the outside, but feel more like roommates than soulmates on the inside. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone, and there is hope. On the outside, Rachel and Marcus had it all. 2 successful careers, a beautiful home, well-behaved kids, and a calendar full of commitments. Friends envied their ambition. Colleagues admired their drive. Even their therapist called them a strong team. But behind the scenes, something was missing. They weren't fighting, they weren't yelling, they were simply disconnected. Conversations were mostly logistical. Did you pay the sitter? Who's doing pickup today? Don't forget your mother's birthday. At night, they sat on opposite ends of the sofa, scrolling, silent. The spark was gone, the intimacy missing, the laughter rare. They had tried date nights, read marriage books, even sat through a few counseling sessions, but nothing stuck. They were polite, respectful, and painfully lonely in their own marriage. Here's the thing, Rachel and Marcus weren't in crisis. There were no slammed doors, no late-night shouting matches. They were simply drifting apart, and neither one knew how to fix it. Rachel felt like she was always the one trying. She bought the books, suggested the date nights, scheduled the counseling appointments, but nothing seemed to make a difference. Marcus, on the other hand, felt like he could never get it right, so eventually he just stopped trying. From the outside, they looked fine, but on the inside, they were miles apart. And that kind of quiet disconnection, it's just as dangerous as constant conflict, sometimes even more so. Because at least with conflict, you know there's still passion, there's still energy, there's still something to work with. But when silence settles in, when 2 people start living parallel lives, that's when marriages quietly fade away. Rachel and Marcus, yes, they had tried a few therapy sessions. They showed up, they talked, they did what they were told, but they were left feeling even more discouraged. In Rachel's words, we were doing everything right, so why did it still feel so off? And that's a question I hear all the time because here's the truth. Traditional therapy often misses the mark. Why? Because it focuses more on talking without first creating the safety and emotional connection that make those conversations meaningful. And without that safety, words just bounce off the surface. They don't land where they need to. Here's what Rachel and Marcus eventually learned. Real connection doesn't start with communication exercises. It starts with emotional connection. It starts with feeling wanted. But here's the kicker. Men and women think differently about what it means to feel loved and connected. Now, Rachel longed for conversation and closeness, the sense that Mark really saw her. Marcus, meanwhile, longed for respect, for affection, for the feeling that Rachel actually wanted him. Neither was wrong. They were simply missing each other because they didn't understand those differences, the differences between how men and women are wired. And here's where it gets even more heartbreaking. Without that understanding, their attempts to reconnect actually push them farther apart. Rachel's efforts to talk things through felt overwhelming to Marcus, and Marcus's tendency to withdraw quietly felt like rejection to Rachel. The harder she pushed, the more he pulled back, and the more he pulled back, the harder she pushed. Sound familiar? So what made the difference? Well, I have to admit, Rachel and Marcus joined my workshop, the Breakthrough Marriage Plan, and for the first time, they understood why they kept missing each other. They learned that the problem wasn't a lack of effort, and it wasn't that they didn't care. It wasn't even that they needed to really talk more. The problem was that they were approaching love from 2 completely different perspectives. And once they began to see each other through that lens, everything shifted. Marcus realized Rachel's longing for conversation wasn't criticism, it was her way of reaching out for closeness. And Rachel realized that Marcus's silence wasn't indifference, it was his way of protecting himself when he felt like he couldn't win. And once they both felt seen and understood, the spark returned. It wasn't overnight, but little by little the laughter came back. The intimacy returned, the closeness grew, and they stopped living like roommates. They started living like passionate partners again. I share Rachel and Marcus's story because I know so many couples who are quietly living the same script. On the outside, everything looks good, but behind closed doors, the marriage feels flat, distant, empty. And that kind of disconnection takes a toll. Loneliness, discouragement, the nagging fear that this is as good as it's going to get. But it doesn't have to be that way. When you understand the differences between men and women, and when you learn how to work with those differences instead of against them, everything changes. That's why I created the Breakthrough Marriage Plan. After decades of working with couples, I saw the same pattern over and over. They were good people, trying hard, but missing each other, because no one had ever taught them the psychology of men and women in marriage. And when you don't understand that piece, you end up playing the blame game. You end up thinking your spouse is the problem, when in reality, the problem is the pattern. That's exactly what this workshop is designed to break. In the Breakthrough Marriage Plan, you'll discover why men and women so often misinterpret one another, how you can create emotional safety so conversations actually bring you closer instead of pushing you apart, and the simple shifts that reignite connection without adding more to your already busy life. This is the first step in building the extraordinary marriage you deserve. So let me ask you, do you ever feel like you and your spouse are living more like roommates than lovers? Do your conversations feel more like to-do lists than heart-to-hearts? If so, you don't have to stay stuck. You can rebuild connection. You can feel wanted again. You can laugh together, dream together, and fall in love all over again. And it starts with understanding each other. And that's exactly what the Marriage Breakthrough Plan will give you. So if you're ready to stop drifting apart and start building the marriage you truly want, I'd love for you to join me. You'll find all the details at revolutionarymarriagecoaching.com. Thanks for watching this episode of the Revolutionary Marriage Podcast. If you found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs encouragement today. And I'll see you in the next video.